Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Man, that's as weak as the one that, as General Brown would say when he was out in Hawaii, we got to do that once again. Good morning, everybody. Morning. All right, that's a little bit better. I got to tell you, it is absolutely great to be here this morning. Number one, serving in different capacities, but still being able to do the kind of work that supports our Army, and in particular, what is near and dear to my heart is the fire support community and the topics that we're going to talk about. I think it was mentioned this morning as a hot topic. This is at what I think is the pinnacle when you think about what the chief talks to in terms of modernization in a continuous environment. One of the critical components of modernization across the United States Army is how to leverage fires in land-based fires in a large-scale combat operations. And the piece that we're going to talk to today and try to get into with the help of this great panel is understanding that from a lethal and non-lethal capability with any sensor, and how do you leverage the best shooter. The one little comment that I would add is, after coming off of active duty and understanding how complex it was when I was on active duty trying to do this, as we go through modernization and change, and you look at what it is that General Brooks just talked to, that level of complexity is just simply magnified. And my hat's off to those that are still cutting through and working these challenges, because it is a tremendous demand and importance for the Army and for the joint community that we get this thing right. And so I'll take a moment to let the panel introduce itself and where they're at and what they're from, and then we'll jump into a few questions. But I'd like to hand it over to the great Commandant at the Fire Center, General Francis. Go ahead.
So my name is Rick Francis. My call sign is Red Lake 6, and it's good to be the king. And so General Brooks at sometimes is confused that he's the king of battle as the FCO chief, and but the Commandant's the king of battle. And so as we relate that, he's got both branches, I've got one. And so that's where we focus at. But we focus on, as the Commandant, the training, leader development, and doctrine. Some of the modernization, Rory Crooks handles a lot of the modernization efforts for Long Range Precision Fires team there. And that's where we focus at for most of the time here. And I've got some background experience as a DCG in the 1st Armored Division, 4 BCT rotations, 2 rotations to the National Training Center. And so that will, if there's some questions about the context of how we do that and how we've done that, I'll be glad to take those as well. Sir.
Colonel Nielsen.
Good morning. My name is Shannon Nielsen, and I represent the All-Domain Sensing Cross-Functional Team. Newly formed and established down in Redstone Arsenal down in Huntsville, Alabama, born from the Assured Positioning, Navigation, Timing, and Space CFT. And there's been a lot of transition. After delivering our 2 modernization efforts for the Army, the MAPS and DAPS, we received a change of mission and are now working the all-domain sensing portfolio. So all-domain sensing, really what we seek to do is to enable enhanced understanding and decision-making through integrated and ubiquitous sensing across all domains. So easy day, easy day. We remain focused a little bit deeper to the Army of 2040, but we also recognize that we must be agile enough to transform and contact and take advantage of opportunities as they present themselves with new and emerging technologies as they come about. So I'm looking forward to the discussion today, and I think I'm the sole Queen of Battle represented here on the panel. So looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah, but we still love you.
Good morning, Guy Yelverton. I'm the Deputy for Acquisition and Systems Management at PEO Missiles and Space, but I've also previously been the Strategic Operational Rockets and Missiles Project Manager for 4 years, and then right after that, the Integrated Fires Rapid Capability Project Manager within the PEO. Integrated Fires, I think, is what we're all here to talk about today, but I'm also responsible for the counter small UAS capabilities coming out of PEO Missile and Space for the Office of Primary Responsibility. That's my second hat I wear as the DASM these days. But back to the integrated fires, that is a key tenet of Major General Lozano's vision for PEO Missile and Space, is how can we utilize our current material solutions in an integrated fashion to bring together those capabilities across field artillery and air missile defense capabilities to bring that to bear on the enemy. And I'll be prepared to talk more about that as we go through our conversation this morning.
Ed?
Thanks, and I also want to say thanks, General Brown, for the warm welcome of Lockheed Martin. My name is Ed Dobeck. I am a Lockheed Martin industry participant, and really thrilled to have an opportunity to speak on behalf of industry on this panel. I am in charge of the Launching Systems Division for Lockheed Martin. That's part of our Integrated Warfare Sensors and Systems organization. We have the opportunity to provide the mid-range capability to the Army, as well as the long-range fires to the Marine Corps. Two pretty maneuverable assets that I think are going a long way. I also have the opportunity today to represent our directed energy programs, specifically the IFPC HEL capability and the DEM SHORAD program that we're a part of, and look forward to having the opportunity to speak about how we're integrating all those with sensors to make sure we get the best kinetic or non-kinetic shooter involved. So thank you.
Well, fantastic, and a great panel indeed. As we start this topic off, and specifically diving into any sensor and best shooter to create lethal and non-lethal effects for large-scale combat operations. Let me come back in a general sense here to General Francis. And General Brooks mentioned early this morning about the changes that have been made organizationally across the fire support community to be able to deal with the future complex challenges that our Army will face in the future. From the Commandant's perspective, can you discuss and talk about some of those changes and how they will create the kind of capabilities we're looking for in any sensor, best shooter to create the kind of effects on the battlefield?
Yeah, I think well, thank you for that, sir. The first way we think about it is from the strategic level, the integration of what's the Theater Fires Command in Europe with the 56 and the Theater Fires element. And what we have seen is the multi-domain task forces integration, particularly in both theaters, and how that capability is being leveraged. You know, multi-domain task forces was designed to deliver effects on the battlefield, lethal and non-lethal, kinetic or non-kinetic, as you described that. Equipped with long-range fires battalions, so the long-range hypersonic weapon, mid-range capability, and then a HIMARS battery as part of, that's kind of like the normal organizational structure for it. And then you think of what's happening now, where we're kind of not giving, but the Army's directed a pilot for the operational fires commands that give a corps, essentially what was formerly a corps-like artillery headquarters, but it's an operational fires command. And so it gives a corps the ability to have a brigade serve as that force field artillery headquarters and allow the subordinate brigades to fight their battalions. And so it gives them that targeting, planning, synchronization, coordination cell that goes into there, and it allows them to do that. And then when you describe it at the division levels, you know, the DIVARTY Force Field Artillery Headquarters with capability as we start to look at that. And then the maneuver brigades still have the command support relationships that are associated with that, DSGS reinforcing, and then the 7 inherent responsibilities that go along with what's supporting that. And so when you think of all of that capability at echelon, which allows for the synchronization and the delivery of an effect on the modern battlefield.
And let me pull on that thread then just for a second with Colonel Nielsen and the all-domain sensing cross-functional team. And again, from a standpoint of .mil PF, leveraging the right sensors in new structured organizations that allows the fire support community to create the effects that it wants on the battlefield. What have you seen are some of the emerging challenges and the things that we need to consider as we leverage those sensors across the battle space?
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you mentioned, you know, the .mil PFP spectrum, because CFTs traditionally work very heavily on the material solutions, but there's an acknowledgement that in collaboration with the CDIDs and others that develop some of the other aspects of that we have to be involved in that throughout the entire process. I would offer that, you know, with our portfolio being all domain sensing, really sensing in terms of the sensor itself isn't the most important part of it. It's the data, and it's the data management. And there are a lot of sensors out there that are already really, really good, and they collect data passively in terms of collecting things that they weren't originally designed to collect. And where does that data go? You know, there used to be signs that we posted in talks that said, who else needs to know? And so it's the same thing with a sensor, that data is being collected. And really the challenge is that how do you pull it? How do you know what to pull in terms of the data, and how do you send it out? So really, that's where I think through based on that question.
And I'm glad you mentioned data because this time next week down in Savannah, Georgia, the technical exchange meeting will occur that in large part the PEO community will come together as to how we're looking at the network that we leverage data and information on that comes from a variety of different sensors to then be able to leverage for the best shooter. From a program executive office perspective, as we look at how we are leveraging future capabilities and discussions at the technical exchange meeting, how do we see ourselves integrated to be able to capture the kinds of data, the kind of information that's needed to operate across future networks that deliver lethal and non-lethal effects?
Thanks, sir. Appreciate the question. So I'm going to answer that by leveraging the other two questions at the same time to talk about how we're pulling in sensor data from different areas. So I'll give a historical reference of the Patriot system. Since we talked field artillery, I'll try to talk air defense as well as a field artilleryman. So our Patriot battalions, a radar, an effector, a launcher to defeat a specific threat type. As we move forward into our integrated air missile defense capabilities, we focus on the Guam Defense System, and we think new term composite battalions made up of Patriot shooters, integrated fire protection capability increment 2, IFPC Inc. 2, and other future capabilities that we could leverage off of that, filtering the data down to maybe the Sergeant Stout or the counter UAS batteries as well. That data is all coming in via the Integrated Air Missile Defense Battle Command System, all filtering in there. Now through that integration, that Army Integrated Air Missile Defense capability, we are able to task organize the type of formation that's needed to defeat the particular threat or scenario that we believe we're going to go fight. And so we can better leverage those capabilities through the Integrated Air Missile Defense Battle Command System, IBCS. And move forward in that future formation type, but expand that thought. So those sensors, it's not just a Patriot sensor anymore. It's the lower tier air missile defense sensor, LTAMS. It's the Sentinel A3. It's the Sentinel A4. And as we continue working through that one to end list on integration of IBCS capabilities, we add in Q53 to that. Now I'm starting to blend across our integrated fires, offensive, defensive capabilities to bring about that ultimate solution to Colonel Nielsen's point on data collection. All these sensors are collecting data, but they've been using just the pieces and parts of that data they need. We'll go back to my Patriot example that it has the air track. So it prosecutes that information, sends it to the Patriot launcher so that it can defeat that threat in the air, regardless of what type it is. But now I have all these sensors, all this data, at the same time as I define what that air threat coming at our forces is and define the best shooter that it needs to go engage with, whether it be an IFPC, a Patriot, to knock that threat out of the sky, or even a counter UAS system. It also, those data points that you referenced that are passively collected, like the point of origin for that information, IBCS can identify that point of origin as a ground track turn that into the right data, communicate with AFATEDs. The AFATEDs now has that point of origin and can determine what's the best field artillery shooter, in my example, whether it be a prism or maybe it's a more operational asset like we've talked TLAM and SM6 earlier, but I'll stay in the realm of counterfire. I can now, at the same time I'm launching that Patriot Interceptor, that PAC-3 MSE round towards that air track, I can engage with HIMARS and PRISM to defeat that archer. I'll use that analogy. Knock the arrow out of the sky and I kill the archer so no more arrows come at me. So all that data, all that task organization that we can gain through IBCS, working through its one to end list to expand our capabilities across our two great formations of air and missile defense and field artillery, brings that all together and utilizes all the data that we need so we can defeat the enemy at any point in the sky and on the ground to cease their activity.
Thank you for the response. And for Ed and our industry rep on the panel here today, obviously the pace of change is very, very rapid. Things happening at an extremely fast pace from an industry perspective and specifically at your company. What sorts of things are you looking for from not only the fire support community, but across the Army to ensure that you're building the right kind of capabilities that will enable the future fire supporters to be able to leverage the kind of effects that they want, both from a lethal and non-lethal perspective? What are the things that are most important for you to be able to hear and understand so that we are delivering the capabilities that the nation needs?
Oh, thank you for that. I think, understanding the need is paramount. I think we've shown moving at pace is critical, right? When you think about something like MRC, we went from a blank sheet of paper to delivery of that first launcher in under 24 months, right? And that came from working with the RICTO in the Army on a deep understanding of what that need is, right? A gap was there between PRISM and the long-range hypersonic. Wanted to bring some longer range precision fires in that area, able to deliver, Tomahawk SM6 capability and a containerized launcher that gives that mobility at the pace they need. I think it was either General Brown or General Brooks mentioned the need to get multiple options for firing out on the field to really provide that laydown for the enemy. Understanding what that looks like gives us the ability to have that pace and that passion to deliver those capabilities really quickly. We have production capacity. We have the engineering expertise, and I think we've proven now we can move at that speed that's required to give that battlefield. And the unique things that were done by the RICTO with some of those contracting OTA approaches, right, allowed that to move faster, and that really let us move at our fastest to give that capability out as quickly as possible. And now you see, some of those batteries in the Philippines, right, which are able to give that maneuvering and that capability in a place where, there's typically not a lot of land available for the Army to operate with such a long range weapon, right? So, I think having that partnership and having the understanding of what is the need and how fast do we need it gives us the ability in industry to work with our partners, work with our supply chain, and deliver those technologies at a pace that meets the desire and the capability that the Army is looking for.
Ed, thank you. And let me just come back to the Commandant here real quick. And again, because of the rapid changes, and you discussed organization, but your portfolio is large, and especially as it talks to training and leader development, which was another aspect that General Brooks discussed. As we are leveraging obviously sensors that are collecting data across multiple domain kinds of environments and in large scale combat operations, what are some of the individual leader and training changes that you see happening to make sure that our leaders at echelon understand the complexities of this future modern battlefield and how to leverage the kind of effects that we're looking for, both lethally and non-lethal?
Yeah, that's a great question because we spent a lot of time talking about this, and so we were spending a lot of time capturing lessons learned that we're seeing on modern day battlefield, and then the integration of, again, non-kinetic and kinetic effects in our PME, the training of survivability. You know, our platforms are our platforms, and so how do you survive better given the platforms you have versus the ones that we might go to in the future? And so we teach this all as part of, first of all, we try to get most of it into our doctrine, but we get it into our POIs to start instructing at the schoolhouse. And as we talk about that, I missed a point earlier in that, you know, there's some narrative out there about our soldiers. And I just invite anybody, come spend the day at Fort Sill. Come spend the day at the National Training Center talking about the capability of our soldiers. And you know, the Future Soldier Prep Course, these are soldiers that, for whatever reason, didn't meet some requirement that want to be in the Army. And so I keep telling the team that's our secret sauce. So we can talk about platforms all the day and sensing, but we've got to continue to talk about what our great American soldiers are doing and how they're doing at Fort Sill. And so I invite anybody that wants to come and see. You got an open door at Fort Sill. We'll take you over to the basic training side to show you what we're doing. We'll take you over to AIT and show you what we're doing. And I think we describe this incorporation of all of this capability and leader development. It all is centered on what our soldiers are doing. There are 480 lieutenants at Fort Sill right now. And so please come take a look. And they are training really, really hard. And we haven't backed off of any requirements or standards there.
General Francis, thank you. And before I go to the audience for questions, I'd be remiss if I did not acknowledge some of our coalition and allied partners that are here in the audience. And I can't help but go down this path, and especially in one of my last assignments was working within NATO. And as we think about all domain sensing and leveraging sensor platforms across a joint and coalition environment, was a real challenge when I was back there doing it on active duty. Think about the complexities of doing it in a combined environment. Colonel Nielsen, can you address some of the significant challenges and ways forward of how we leverage that with our coalition and joint partners?
Certainly. I think we have to begin feeling more comfortable transitioning from no foreign to yes foreign in ways that are appropriate. Sometimes we inadvertently box out partners and allies based on some of the policies. So certainly that's something worth addressing to find some common sense there. I think also standardized data and message formatting works, and I know that units already do that, but you can't train that enough. You know, you don't build trust in contact. You build it through repetition and shared experiences and things. So, you know, you can't do enough training incorporating allies and partners. It only contributes to agility and speed when you need it. And I also think leveraging the authorities and capabilities that our partners and allies have that we may not is also something that's critically important. I think there's a lot of historical vignettes that could be added to the discussion on how we leverage that to our best interests. But again, if you don't understand it, then it becomes a challenge when you really need it.
Thank you for that. And if you've got questions, think about them, generate them. I've got a few on hand here that I want to address to the panel, and they're open for any of you to help respond on. But the first question comes to us is when we talk about any sensor, best shooter, and maximizing effects on the battlefield, what are we doing, or how are we factoring in the Secretary Austin's Civilian Harm Mitigation and Response Initiative? Two-part question. And as you update doctrine, training, Are you factoring in civilian environments and non-combatant inevitability, sharing the battlefield, obviously, with a future peer adversary? And I open it up to whoever wants to.
Yeah, I'll
Take that on.
lead, but I'm looking for support on this one, please. First and foremost, I think we all acknowledge that the first engagement doesn't need to be a munition, right? So talking about the use of kinetic and non-kinetic effects. So certainly that's a big part of it.
Right.
But you know, being able to leverage those capabilities, I think is really big.
And sir, and we've trained collateral damage estimates for a long time as part of the curriculum there for fire supporters. And so understanding the rules of engagement and things and the fire support coordination measures that are employed to prevent harm and to protect facilities and infrastructure as well.
I could add a quick industry perspective too. I mean, I think when we're talking about the best shooter, sometimes we have to take all that into effect, right? So we offer those systems like directed energy that bring a much scaled down, much more precise response for some of those, and making sure that, you know, our training that we deliver has that coordination with the Army and the warfighter to be able to provide that response that says, hey, you can use a lesser power laser, you can use a lesser effector that's going to limit the amount of civilian safety concerns, is part of that whole equation, right? So, you know, on the one hand, you have a kinetic effector where, you know, long range precision fires, hypersonics, et cetera. But with a thing that comes, or with the technology that comes with directed energy, you have the ability to shoot it at 300 kilowatts or shoot it less, or shoot it at a lower power with a more precise, that's going to give you that precision response that's going to minimize any of that collateral effects too. So the fact that in industry, we were able to work with the training curriculum to make sure that the warfighter understands that high power, huge response may not always be the exact right answer, that there is this lesser response and these smaller directed energy precision activities that can be done is where we're trying to help do our part from industry too, to make sure that gets solved.
Second question from the audience, and that is the Close Combat Lethality Task Force, or CCLTF, is one of DoD's 5 joint CFTs comprised of OSD, United States Marine Corps, U.S. Special Operations Command, and Army stakeholders. Could you share any land-based fires initiatives stemming from CCLTF in preparation for the Army's role in large-scale combat operations?
Yeah, I have a unique perspective on that, considering I was the director of that organization previously. So really the scope and scale of the CCLTF is really at that squad and platoon level. So it's really the tip of the spear of our infantry forces, also not just Army, but as mentioned, Marine Corps and Special Operations, of course. So you can see a lot of work, whether it's through the soldier lethality CFT inside the Army, but also with the other CFTs that are doing work. So really there's a lot of drafting across the joint force from a lot of the initiatives under SOCOM and the Army specifically.
Okay. Anybody else want to add to that, or I'll move on to the next one. And again, it's another learning related question. So what are we learning about in how to manage and prioritize ammunition expenditures when you consider the fact that in a multi-domain fight with all domain sensing, we're likely to be able to produce more targets on the battlefield, and then obviously how do you prioritize those, and how do you think about that from a standpoint of ammunition expenditure and sustainment as we deal with the probably expansive number of targets that we would potentially engage out in the large scale combat battlefield of the future.
Yeah, it really comes down to the question of what is the role of data analytics and being able to do predictive analysis based on good data sets, historical data sets that you've collected, being able to track measures of effectiveness and performance through engagements to really get after what you're getting at there, being able to forecast the needs of readiness, maintenance, and those types of things there. So really the use of AI and machine learning really helps to do those calculations quickly in order to get that stuff to the point of need.
I think it's foundational to our ops process, right? So targeting and your targeting boards, working groups, the places where you're making decisions about the allocation of resources against the thing for some effect. And so I think that's where it all comes together, right? So your targeting process will drive that ammunition expenditure, CSR, RSI rates, given where the maneuver force is going to maneuver to. So because everything is a target doesn't mean it needs to be shot. And so you will decide that as part of the ops process driven by your targeting.
I'll just add on to those two comments from the air missile defense or counter UAS defensive piece, and that's your layered defense, right? So as I have these capabilities, I know my ranges, I know my capabilities of the particular munitions. The sensors can help me decide which one is the right one to use. But that comes back to the data analytics. What we've been terming as decision aids to help decrease that cognitive burden on the soldiers so that they can make the right decision at the right time. It's not about engaging as far out as possible with the most expensive round type to breathe a little easier. It might be letting that particular threat round come in a little closer so I can take it out with the right system that's there so that I can better utilize my entire suite of munitions and take on the full effect of the fight.
For General Francis, and again, a training and leader development sort of focus. And we've had a lot of discussion here about emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning capabilities, how to leverage data at the fire center. And you think about the centerpiece of all of our formations are our soldiers. So as we have seen these advancements in industry from a technology standpoint, what are some of the things that we are doing to ensure that soldiers at echelon leaders have the skill sets and awareness of the emerging capabilities to be able to leverage them in a large scale combat operations and being able to deliver the kinds of lethal and non-lethal effects on the battlefield?
Yeah, what we're seeing is as we are getting more complex, we are focusing also on process, right? And so as opposed to repetition, we're spending a lot of time in emphasizing training the cognitive. And so how do you train that complexity as a normalcy versus its complex, right? So how do you train in a high combat environment that's with lots of sensors and lots of data and lots of information? How do you normalize that so they can synthesize that? So it's not, everything is blurring around you because it's so much. And so we're working through and we're seeing that because a lot of our targeting is transitioning from deliberate planning out from 24 to 96 hours time horizons to a lot of it's becoming dynamic because the enemy gets evoked, conditions are changing. And so we're doing that in our exercising, we're doing that in our development, we're adding that into the POIs as a function of that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, and if I may, so what General Francis just described is hard enough. And I would offer that, in the contested environment that we will forever be in, being able to do that in a DDIL environment as well is critically important. So being able to train the communicate piece with as much vigor and zeal as we do the shoot and move is absolutely a must as we engage in multi-domain operations.
Yeah, I just, if I could dare to pick up on a thread that Colonel mentioned, having those mixed battalions of effectors, kinetic and non-kinetic, it really changes the game for the warfighter. So to his point of, if directed energy is the best response, that's going to have a shorter range of effectiveness than some of the other munitions that are more expensive, right? So the answer might be letting some of those UAVs or rounds get closer so directed energy can then be the response, or high-powered microwave or any of the other non-kinetics, right? So having that partnership to work on that training that says, I see the threat, I've assessed the threat, I'm going to wait on the threat to make sure that I have the most cost-effective response, or, the optimized response to that is a very different tactic that really needs to have a lot of training, a lot of capability, and a lot of analytics behind it to change that operational model. So that's something I think we're all working towards. It's a difficult problem, but I think it's one that we can collectively solve. And as those battalions in the warfare becomes more mixed with shooters like PAC-3 and MRC and IFPC Hell and DEM SHORAD, you're going to have layers and layers of ranges and options that are going to present a unique challenge for that operator to be able to make a decision on. So the better the aids become, the better the warfighter becomes, and we can help make them move quicker. So thank you for bringing that up. I thought that was a great point.
Yeah, okay, we do have a couple of other questions here. And I guess this is for all. The future requires multi-domain or all-domain operations for LSCO. How are we working with the other services to become effective at multi-domain operations or all-domain? Are we moving closer to any sensor best shooter? And what can we do better?
So there's domain interdependence. And so the Army brings a lot of the ground-based capability, but it relies on the joint force. As an example, space. The Army is a big customer in the space domain, and they're inextricably linked, quite frankly. So not just being able to provide forces, but understand what capabilities the other services have across the joint forces is critical.
And I'll add, so, as we work on our PEO Missile and Space, our integrated fires test campaigns and other demonstrations that we've been part of, we're looking for those opportunities to infuse other services capabilities, like we've done F-35 as a targeting capability to fire off HIMARS shots out at White Sands Missile Range. As I look at one of the areas that's near and dear to my heart, counter UAS, we are integrating other service capabilities while we're over in CENTCOM through, our FAD C2 system being the nexus as we integrate with Ninja from the Air Force and the Navy's Corian. So we're always looking at those opportunities to integrate other services capabilities. And to my coalition partners, we're also looking at how we integrate those in the CENTCOM AOR. We've had many opportunities with local countries to look for opportunities to integrate our BDOCs that are out there so that we can get out after that counter UAS fight in a joint coalition manner. So just offer those couple of examples.
Okay. How are we doing on time here? Got plenty of time? Okay, great. So the questions continue to come in at a rapid pace. And so therefore, for the entire panel, are there efforts to leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning to do, I think that is, to leverage data to select the best shooter effector while keeping humans in the loop? And I think there was a question stated earlier, and I think General Brooks got at about leveraging AI and ML. But one of the key pieces here is the human in the loop and how AI and ML contribute to being able to rapidly engage targets and leverage the emerging technologies that industry are putting out there today.
So I'll just start off with, what we're doing over in PEO Missiles and Space. So come back to, and I apologize for, I keep coming back to the counter UAS arena, but it's very closely tied to IBCS as well. So as we look at those systems that bring together all that information, that data analytics, you are absolutely correct. We need AI ML, or again, what I've been calling decision aids, to help decrease that cognitive burden for our soldiers. So it allows them to make decisions quicker with fewer clicks on the mouse or on the keyboard, so they can get out after that targeting solution. So as we move forward, one of the areas that we're moving forward in is a FAD-C2 recompete, where we're looking for a counter UAS fire control solution that will bring about the ability for soldiers to, one, it'll integrate more sensors, more effectors on, maybe even, I'll use the term on the fly, but I wouldn't say that I can plug it in and 2 seconds later it works, but at a more rapid manner to bring that information together. Well, that just means I'm going to have more information coming into that future counter UAS fire control system. So one of those tasks for our industry partners is that AI ML, those decision aids that help decrease that cognitive burden, so that the system is now seeing the threat, classifying the threat, and then helping the warfighter determine where to engage. Do I engage farthest out because it's a significant threat, or do I wait for it to come in a little bit closer and engage with the more cost-effective solution, to Ed's point earlier? So those decision aids are incredibly important. We're working on that within the counter UAS fire control system. And as we burn through our 1-to-N list for IBCS, those are the types of capabilities that our Integrated Fires Mission Command Project Office are working to integrate into IBCS specifically as well.
Yeah, I'll add too. I think Colonel Nielsen made a point earlier about the data is more important than the sensor at this point, and really where we're seeing the biggest application of that AI ML is in that data arena. There is so much data available on the networks and to the operator that they can quickly become engrossed in, data analytics and focused on trying to do data massaging that would take them away from the day-to-day tasks. So the more that we can use that AI ML to parse that data, put together an operational picture that lets an operator make that decision more quickly, that's where we're seeing the biggest benefit. The amount of sensors and the amount of data that comes in on any operation is just overwhelming at this point. I think, I haven't been around as long as some, but it's probably more than ever before that the operator has access to in terms of just pure data. So the way that we are able to use those AI ML technologies to look at that data, find the patterns, find the threats, find those ones that are out of the ordinary type data points that the operator then can look at, decide, and act upon, is where we're seeing, the immediate benefit and what we're trying to work to train to and trying to work to deploy in terms of getting it right to the warfighter.
Ed, let me come back to you again from an industry perspective here. And having transitioned out of the uniform and into the world of industry, I'd like for you to highlight a little bit about where are you seeing the opportunities to team, partner, be with the Army and the fire support community in places where you get the opportunity to bring your capabilities to experimentation and simulations that allow you to make sure that we're properly integrated with this future requirement.
Yeah, thanks. We have a great partnership with PEO M&S, through the MRC program. And through that, it gives us the opportunity to work on some of these expeditionary live fires with partners like the Strategic Capabilities Office and, some of the SCO technologies. So having the ability to use those launchers in those expeditionary experimental fires that brings the technologies that SCO is interested on, which are usually next generation type feel, with the actual technologies that are in the field now, things like an MRC battery, things like an LRF, Marine Corps shooter, the unmanned autonomous vehicle that brings. Those partnerships to be able to do those excursions and do those live fires are really where we're able to tackle those and do those advanced AI ML in a more controlled environment that still gets you the operational live fire, that gets you that real on the ground data, but allows you to bring some of those AI ML forward thinking technologies. So, something like MRC, which started in the RICTO and has transitioned to PEO M&S, POMNS has been a great partner in being able to look at that in a forward-thinking manner, making assets available for those tests and doing things, at different ranges, across the country and even now internationally. That allows us to bring some of those next-gen technologies that then we can work on technology insertion to field it when it makes sense. So that's really where we're seeing the opportunity to play together in some of those next-generation thinkings. I mean, from an industry perspective, the technology moves very fast. We went from Chat GPT being a novel thing till the new hires that are in the industry teams have learned how to use that forever. Like they come to us wondering why we're not using it more, in industry. And then when we go talk to the Army, it's another layer of generational difference between what technologies are in the field versus, what's there now. So, that kind of partnership, that kind of experimentation is where we're able to bring that together and really bring all the good ideas that SCO has, that the Army brings, that the industry can bring, and put them in an experimentation environment that then decides if it's ready to deploy or not.
Back to General Francis. Sir, simulations, and especially leveraging simulations to have a better understanding of future battlefield and requirements, and especially as training for artillery and leveraging indirect fire capabilities. Are we doing enough with simulations that give the fire support community and the Fire Center of Excellence the insights that it needs to continue to this process towards large-scale combat operations and how to best leverage effects in it?
I will always say we can always do more, right? So this notion of enough is, I think we can always learn, particularly with our warfighters experimentations as we go, and then some of the other sims that we're running for land-based fires that we have seen. We could always do more to learn, right? So we've, as context, we've adjusted ammunition as a kind of an experiment to see, okay, hey, based on what's available in stockage, how would you then prosecute? Go back to the can you prosecute the target you need to with the current ammunition expenditures that you have, and how long it would take to get ammunition into theater and then move it, and then based on that prioritization. So we could always do more, and I think we could always learn more from simulating more.
Now I'm going to open this up again to the floor. Can you address the balance of mass fires versus high dollar smart munitions? And the question really is, can you share your thoughts on both cost per round of effectiveness and overall battlefield effectiveness? And I open it up probably best for the Commandant.
I wish Rory Crooks would answer this question, because he showed me his chart and I didn't memorize it. But and that's the challenge, right? So as we talk about the cost of smart munitions, they get really, really expensive. And as we think about what non-precision munitions give you for mass, but you have a gap conversation that you're talking about, right? So when you start talking about munitions that get really, really expensive versus kind of when we start talking about dumb munitions, as we would call them, it's the balance. And so matter of fact, I was just over talking to the G8, and I'll stop talking because I won't share the conversation. But there's continual exercising, and as you talk about simulating on what's the best capability for us going forward in the future relative to cost for munitions. And I'll stop there because I'll say too much.
I know that some of this cuts across a lot of the panel discussions that will go on today, but and again, for anyone on the panel, but probably for Shannon Nielsen, in the area of long-range rapid response, precision fires, and strike capabilities, sensing, counter-battery radars, what does the future of brigade combat teams and field artillery battalions look like? Specifically, short-range towed artillery pieces with relatively high displacement, survivability, edging closer and closer to adversary targeting cycles. It's a lot.
Yeah, I'd like to defer to the commandant on this one
Okay.
as well. We're starting to talk about force structure and things like that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I think we tell every lieutenant now that's going through the basic course that you as a platoon leader are going to have to fight with counter UAS capability. You're going to have to fight with UAS capability. You're going to have to be able to still fight and employ your platoon inside of your battery formation. And so, if you were to ask me what it looks like, a platoon leader fights with counter UAS, and maneuvering their platoon and survivability inside of the enemy's decision space based on the maneuver support.
Yeah. And within the targeting cycle, do we train with and utilize red teams to help identify and mitigate cognitive bias that could lead to target misidentification of the target and understanding the specific target engagement? If red teams are not used, what is the fire support community doing to integrate cognitive bias training?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take that one back because I know we don't do that right now at, again, talking division and below red teaming. What you do get out is, are you having success or not when you do at the end of it, your assessment working groups. And so you might have bias going into it, but what you should be able to see on the backside of it is at the assessment working group, did you have the effect you were trying to achieve during that targeting cycle? And do you have to reattack? And it should show itself based on what the enemy is doing if you're not doing it, but we can always add some cognitive bias training into it. But the process should show itself on the outputs when it goes up on the board of did you have the effect you were trying to achieve during those cycles over time.
Okay, we've got about 14 minutes left. I just wanted to open it up to the general floor unless you've got a few other questions here for us. You guys are popular this morning.
General Brooks left us too much time.
Okay. And these are all lengthy questions. I'll get to the short one first. Let's see, where are we addressing the, can't read that word here, but it looks like UAS deconfliction problems. I don't know whether I accurately stated or there's a word here that it's a little hard to read, but I guess what they're really getting at is leveraging UAS platforms and the ability to deconflict the data and the targeting that comes off of those platforms from a sensor perspective.
I'll venture a response here. I mean, to us, to the fire control system that it's passing that information to, it's just another sensor, right? So the state vectors of where it's coming from or how it's being used, whether it's an LTAMS, a Sentinel A4 or a Q53 or an airborne platform or some other national technical means is providing that targeting data. I would say to our IBCS in our material solutions, it's just additional data. Where it's coming from, as long as it's good, responsible data, which we can definitely filter out data that's not usable. I would say it doesn't matter where it's coming from.
Okay. And an industry question for Ed, and it really gets at IRAD spending. Where you're looking to develop capabilities, but also to speed up development and reduce costs. To what extent is industry, and from your perspective, using digital engineering tools like digital twins These tools can obviously reduce overall cost effectiveness. And what is the industry's incentive to help reduce costs through using these various methods?
Thanks. A couple parts of that one, I think. So I'll try to tackle them all individually. But in terms of internal investment, we always are looking to invest IRAD that's going to move our technology forward. So, every year we work very closely with our partners and, the Army and other services just to understand what future needs may be and how we can invest to solve them, right? So, what my investment portfolio looks like for next year, it's very heavy in counter UAS technologies, very heavy in hypersonic launching technologies, and really focused on, where those emerging problems are and how best to solve them with things like machine learning and AI to result in some sort of experimental demonstration that can prove some additional generational capabilities to our partners. In terms of where we are with things like digital twin and engineering tools, so Lockheed Martin has really invested in that in the last few years. We have the 1LMX capabilities, which was a focused corporate effort to help move us towards all of the different engineering technologies that, quite frankly, the engineers that we are hiring out of college are extremely versant in, and we were maybe a little bit behind in adopting. So I'd say since 2023 through 2024, we've made huge strides in moving everything towards a digital environment. So all the digital twins, all the model-based systems engineering, everything we design now is rooted in that kind of tool set and that kind of digital twin environment. So as if you think 5-6 years ago, we certainly weren't there. I'd say the last 24 months, the corporation has really moved us forward. And I think a lot of the industry has too. And some of it is, in the name of efficiency. And some of it is in the name of, it's where the market's going and it's where how the engineers are being trained and how to work. And if we want to continue to keep pace with where the market's going and how industry moves, we needed to move too. And, as we're entering, 2025, we're absolutely, on pace to have all of those tools be a part of every product. And why we do it is, quite frankly, affordability. We always have an interest in making sure our customers get the most for their budget, whether it's us or, in launching systems, we have 15 international partners. So certainly towards coalition partners, we want to make sure that we are getting the most affordable, the most advanced solution we can, out to the warfighter. So the fact that we can now use those tools to reduce NRE, to make it not only more efficient, but make it move quicker is really where we see our investment return. Because the more affordable we are, the more products we can produce, the more efficient our factory runs, it's better for everyone. And it helps industry move forward in terms of making sure that we don't price ourselves out or have conflicts like you see now where these asymmetric responses are caused by the fact that we use very expensive munitions against very inexpensive threats. Right. So the fact that we can be down that cost curve and bring ourselves to a point where we're becoming more and more efficient, more and more affordable, that just is what's good for industry. And if it's, usually good for industry, it's good for our partners and places like the Army as well.
Ed, thank you for those insights.
Can I add on to that?
Sure,
So
absolutely.
From
Go
a
right
PEO
ahead.
perspective, I want to make sure that all my industry partners are using their IRAD dollars on things that benefit the U.S. Army. So it's that collaboration and that sharing of priorities as we currently see them, so that I ensure that they're spending their IRAD dollars on things that we, the U.S. Army, see in our future. The other thing that I tell them when I meet with all of them all the time is the caveat is that's the priorities that I understand of today. When the priority changes tomorrow, I try to reach out and contact them right away so that I'm not a liar. And that our priorities, we stay aligned so that we stay focused on providing the best capability to our warfighter at the right time as we're looking deep into the future for the utilization of those IRAD dollars.
With the remaining about 5 minutes, I'd like to and the panel has done a great job here of taking on questions and giving their perspective and insights on this very important topic. But I'd like to give you, each about a minute or so, if you had any other closing comments, or if there's something that you missed that you want to make sure that you're talking to we'll close out with that and allow you to sort of help close out this first session.
Sir, thank you. It's been great being here, and I think that again, the invitation stays open to come to Lawton. Come in February; it's actually pretty warm, and great opportunity to go out. But I do think, you know, the one thing just to tie it all together is we are taking every lesson that we learn and trying to incorporate as fast as we can into programs of instruction. And we're breaking things along the way to be able to do that, right? You got to change some old processes to be able to do that. But you are getting a great product out of Fort Sill. I'm biased because I'm responsible for what you get coming out of there. But I will tell you that our soldiers and leaders and non-commissioned officers that are coming out there are able to fight and win and survive where they're at. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. We talked about it a little, but we didn't go too far down the road, and unfortunately we're out of time, right? So I just wanted to highlight just the leveraging of and synchronization, integration of kinetic and non-kinetic effects. It's paramount in everything that we do. So there's a lot of talk for all the right reasons on the lethal side, but leveraging the non-lethal side is equally as important. Thank you.
So I too just want to say thanks for the opportunity to participate on this panel. I had a great morning. From here, I get to go be a keynote speaker at the Counter US Symposium that's across town. So I think let's stay dressed up all day. But I just wanted to close with, you know, I think that the foundations for integrated fires exist in our products within PEO Missile and Space today. It's really driving that collaboration and communication between our two great branches, air defense and field artillery, that brings that integrated fires capability together today. And we can provide, I heard the question out there earlier today, we can provide that integrated fire solution in real time. So thank you very much for the opportunity to participate.
Yeah, and I'll say thanks again, General Brown, for letting an industry person here on the panel with such such esteemed uniformed officers. But from our perspective, again, I heard Major General Brooks say, we have this shared urgent need to sense, decide, and act faster. And as part of industry, that's really what we want to help enable is that ability to bring those kinetic and non-kinetic effectors to the warfighter in a way that's going to let that pace move quicker. And we really look forward to just continuing to support that mission. And thanks for letting us on the panel.
Hey, look, my sincere thanks to AUSA for assembling this group of great professionals to talk about this very important topic. To General Francis, if climate change must be alive and well at Fort Sill if it's warm in February. Okay, and I guess it's all relative. But all kidding aside, jokes aside, to your point, Shannon, in coming as a fire supporter who wore the uniform and had to try to do this thing of the integration of fires, lethal and non-lethal, we could have a discussion about that until the cows come home. How you do that, and how do you do that in a way that in today's environment, in a multi-domain environment, now adds additional places of where you want to be able to leverage those kind of effects. So I think this panel allowed us to at least start scratching the surface to that and continuing the dialogue towards that end. And so my compliments to each and every one of you on the work that you do every single day to make sure that our Army has what it needs as we look to the future, large-scale combat operations against peer competitors and in a multi-domain environment, leveraging all of the capabilities that technology and industry can offer, so that, as General Brooks said, we never enter into a equal fight. It's always with overmatch. So thank you all very much. And that concludes the first panel for today.